Hello, Bible scholars. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Oops, It's a Bible Channel. Oops, because nothing says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel," quite like that does. I'm just your fellow student, Lee Nicole, and today we're going to be talking about an example of Jesus' amazing debate skills. He was obviously a great teacher, and he was the Son of God, and the perfect example for us of how we are to live to honor God. But obviously, not only that, he was God's Son himself, and he died on the cross to save us from the wrong things we do, which I have a video about right here. But aside from that, he was also a really, really good debater. So, we're going to look at just one example of how he does this and some cultural things that go into this particular discussion Jesus had and the pretty cool implications of what he's saying, because there's layers. So, the passage we're going to talk about is Matthew 22, verses 15 through 22. This is the story of Jesus talking to the Pharisees about whether or not they should pay taxes to Caesar. I'm going to go ahead and read the entire thing out loud, and then I'm going to break it down afterwards. So, here we go. Okay, so here we go. Matthew chapter 22, starting in verse 15 through verse 22. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" They said, "Caesar's." Then he said to them, Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. Okay, so there's quite a bit to unpack here. But, so we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to work our way through. So, we're going to jump back to the beginning, verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. The Pharisees were the religious leaders of the time. They were kind of in charge, and they were supposed to be upholding God's law, and they were supposed to be teaching the Israelites basically how best to honor God through what they do. Now, they didn't like Jesus very much because he claimed to be God, and to them that was absolute blasphemy, which it would have been if it wasn't true. But the Pharisees didn't like him that much, so they decided to ask him a bit of a leading question. They decide to try to trap him in what he says. And the trap comes in this question. They send their disciples to them. So basically they told these people what to say. And they also went with the Herodians. Now, the Herodians and the Pharisees did not get along very well either, because Herodians aligned themselves with King Herod, which is part of where they got their name from. And they blended with the Roman culture of the time. So they blended Judaism and Roman culture. So they honored Caesar, and the Pharisees did not. They wanted to go against Caesar, but the Herodians were for Caesar and for Rome in general. But the Pharisees thought God was going to send the Messiah to set them free from Rome. So they very much did not agree. But they were joining together to fight against this one guy, Jesus. So I guess he was causing so much of a problem to them, or they just didn't like him so much that they joined together to try to trap Jesus. And here's the beginning of the trap. "Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully." So they're emphasizing, we know that you don't just make things up, you say what is actually true about what God says. So they're kind of praising him, but they're kind of masking the fact that this is a trap of a question. And And it says you don't care about politics, so you're not biased, so there's not going to be like a bias or the way things look that's going to affect how you answer this. And then here is the simple sounding question. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, or is it not? In God's law, using God's law as revealed through Moses, is it God's will for us to pay taxes to Caesar, or should we not pay taxes to Caesar? Now, this was a trap, because if he's just simply answered with yes or no, either way things would have been bad. If he said, yes, we should pay taxes to Caesar, then a lot of people would stop following him, because obviously they don't like paying taxes to Caesar. And people would have thought he wasn't the Messiah, because the Messiah was supposed to overthrow Rome and things like that. But if he said, no, you shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar, then the Herodians were right there, and he would have gotten at least arrested for that, because that was directly going against Caesar, obviously. But Jesus sees through this guise of just a genuine question. Jesus sees through that and sees to the trick, the trap that's being set for him. He sees straight through it. And so he doesn't just answer straight up yes or no. No, instead, he flips it around and asks them a question which will lead them to the answer. This was a very common practice for rabbis at that time to kind of help their students come to the answer. Obviously, that wasn't the only way they taught, but that was a pretty common way to do it. So he says, show me the coin for the tax. So, if they were looking at the coin for the tax, I'm going to go ahead and put a picture of the coin that they would use right here. But we are going to look at what it says on there. So, you see, kind of like on our coins, there is a face, and then there's words around it. The face was the face of the current Caesar, the current ruler. So this was Tiberius Caesar. And the inscription also said Tiberius Caesar, son of the divine Augustus. So he was claiming that he was the son of God, or the son of a son of God. I'm not entirely sure which one. But he claimed divinity. And so for the Jews to pay this tax, to use this coin, basically, in their minds at least, for some of them, it was kind of affirming that Caesar was divine, which went completely against what they believed. But part of Jesus' point here is it's just an inscription. It doesn't make it true. The point is pretty clearly laid out in The Chosen, which is a part of where I got the inspiration for this. Obviously, I'm not taking all of the things from a TV show, but some of the ideas kind of came from there a little bit. And so they brought him a denarius. That's what the coin was called, a denarius. And so Jesus says, whose likeness and inscription on this? Basically, yeah, so whose likeness is on the coin, and their likeness is Caesar's likeness. This is something that Caesar produces. And so then Jesus says, therefore, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. So he's saying that the fact that it has its likeness on it makes it his. And render to God the things that are God's. So if you look at it this way, something having the likeness of a person makes it theirs. So Jesus says, render to God the things that are God's. And one thing that makes something God's is the likeness of God. And what's described as being made in the image of God? Humans. So in a way, Jesus is also saying, one of the layers of the things he's saying is, you are God's. You need to turn back to him. So that's just one of the layers to what he's saying here. And is he saying pay taxes? Yeah, kind of. He's implying that you should pay taxes, because it's not just paying allegiance to the country. It also pays for important things, like even today. Back then in Rome, they would still help pay for buildings and roads, just like it does now. So paying taxes isn't necessarily pledging your allegiance to a country. It is helping build society. So Jesus was saying, yes, you probably should pay your taxes, but it's not as big of a deal as it seems to sound. And then when people heard this, they kind of just marveled at it. And then they just kind of left and walked away. So I forgot to mention this earlier, but this was part of a very long discussion back and forth between Jesus and the religious leaders inside of the temple. And obviously the temple is supposed to be a place of worship, but this they used as a place of hostility against Jesus, who is God. So that's a bit ironic. But takes place in the temple, and it's a part of a longer discussion, which I might break down more of the discussion in a future video, but that's not really the point. This is a little bit of a shorter video, but it's a bit of a shorter passage too, so I decided to just break down this one. Because there are kind of a lot of layers to it. I didn't get into everything that's there, I'm sure. I'm sure there's more research that I could have done. But this is what I have learned and what I've done my research for. So that's what I have for you guys for today. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. That way I know you enjoyed it and can do more like these. If you like my videos in general and would like to see more of them, then the best way you can do that is hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell next to it. That way you can always be updated whenever I post a video, even if it's outside of my normal Friday. And if you have any questions or you have a point that you'd like to bring up, or if you have a request for a video, go ahead and comment that. That way I can see it and respond to it. And that way other people can see it as well. So that's all for today. God bless you all. I will see you next Friday. Read your Bibles.